Hey. Welcome back, everybody, to another installment of the infamous Ugritone Wacky Podcast. And joining me here today, as always, is Mr. Aaron Cloutier and myself. No, my name is Rondi Rock. And we have another very special guest joining us today, Mr. Erik Gustafson. How you doing,
Hello.
buddy?
How's it going, man? Doing all right?
Good. Cool. Yeah. So trying to survive the hot and sweaty summer nights.
Very nice. Well, good to see you again, man. If only virtually. The last time was in Detroit there at the last date of the Grindle tour I was on.
Yeah. And that was a long tour you guys did. Like,
it was about a month and a half.
Yeah. Because I remember looking at the dates and it's like, holy shit, like you guys went to Vancouver and like all the throughout the southern states and Midwest, East Coast, like no stone unturned. And
pretty much. So they're kind of like the industrial kind of stuff. And they do pretty well. They started out in Europe at Grendel. So luckily they have the status enough to have a tour bus. So that was really nice to have a bunk and not be in a van. So felt pretty spoiled on that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to think that it was when like shows were running, and now it's obviously been like year and a half of just tumbleweeds and crickets for the most venues, and it's like, what can you do? It's a lot of now they're kind of coming back.
It's
now they're kind of coming back.
Sorry, go ahead.
We started to open up here in Austin, so.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's finally like Ontario, because I live just on a football fields on the Canadian side of the Detroit River, so so I follow the Ontario laws here. But Ontario was it was kind of like California, where they had a really long and grueling lockdown to try and combat the thing, and so now it's like finally coming back, like being able to go karting and just do like normal stuff, so it's awesome. But so today we're gonna dive deep into the archives of the Swedish death metal, because you were there in the heyday. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So were your parents originally from Sweden, or did you like how did that?
Yeah, long story short, my mom remarried, and she now the funny thing is my actual last name is Gustafsson. So but when my mom remarried, she's like, you know what? I don't want this third generation American. So she actually married a real deal Swede who was in the country working for a computer business. And as soon as I was about to go into high school here in Texas, they're like, we're moving to Sweden. I'm like, you're going to ruin my life. But of course it didn't. It was awesome. So I moved to Stockholm, and it was really a situation of a weird kid being in the right place at the weird time. So I just happened to go to the same school with Nicke Andersson, with Fred Espy, and Kenny Håkansson, which was the bass player from the Helicopters, if you got into them at all.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I was one of the other few weird kids at the school, and it was just happenstance. So.
Yeah, because like metal in general, like what's the time like late 80s, early 90s, like
this would have been when I got over there would have been like 87, 88, maybe.
Oh, okay, yeah. So like metal was still like fairly new, and kind of like punk was already on its way sort of out. So I get the it's like metal was new, so there wasn't as many, and there definitely was no like subgenres like, hey, I kind of like you, but you're into that doom metal and I'm more of a black metal guy. So
right. No, it wasn't yet.
It's still like
exactly. You actually hit the nail on the head, Ron, because I was actually a skate punk. And like I said, I was at the school with the other weird dudes who were already metal. So they were like, hey, you like, DRI and Celtic Frost and Slayer? Well, how about try this on for size? So they kind of pulled me into the death metal world. And, slowly the mohawk went away and the long hair grew out, and it happened.
Yeah.
So what were some of the first bands that you were introduced to, like as far as the death metal genre goes?
So the guys in at the time it was Nihilist. It wasn't before it was Entombed, and they were really big into pen paling, and that was huge back in that time. They legit people wrote letters and sent tapes back and forth. So he was turning me on to the first demos of Morbid Angel, first Carcass demos, Immolation, other things like that.
Oh yeah.
But the same thing, like I said, is that Swedish death metal really comes from punk. And so those guys were also big into Kiss and stuff. So if you think about it, the groove and the punk, all that went into influences from American death metal. And so that's kind of how it came about.
That totally explains Entombed's cover of God of Thunder now. I totally understand that now. So much
big into Kiss, big into punk rock. So if you notice the D beat and stuff happening.
Totally. Yep. They pulled that from like DRI and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. All that stuff. But it was cool. It was a cool time, man. Absolutely. So I became a death metal kid, and it wasn't too much of a stretch of, so.
Yeah. Did you find that like it like ruined other music for you for a while though? Like it just like kind of pulled you in and it was like only death metal? That's kind of what happened to me. Yeah. Like
totally. What happened to you? What happened? Tell me about that.
Me personally? So, I mean, I grew up in a very, very small town in New Hampshire, and I think my older brother introduced me to Metallica and Pantera and stuff like that, which is great, and I love that.
The gateway drugs, yes.
Yep. And then, I met one of like the 3 other people that I knew in that state that liked metal. So we had to be friends, and I can't remember who it was. He turned me on to Deicide. I think I was already listening to like my brother turned me on to Cannibal Corpse before that. And I remember, just Cannibal Corpse scaring the shit out of me because I was probably 12 or 13 and just reading the lyrics with like trembling hands, But then my buddy introduced me to Deicide, Morbid Angel, things like that, Carcass. And it was never the same. The infection took hold. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that became our life. We were just pen paling with other bands. And it just became that you pretty much eat, breathe, and sleep that thing. And so, interestingly enough, even though I was buddies with the Entombed guys, I didn't really start playing because they had a full lineup. And so I didn't get invited into their band, but I joined the other guy's band, which was Fred Espy from Dismember. And so I was the very first bass player of Dismember for about 5 minutes. So it became a popularity contest. I was friends with all of them, but I think myself and Fred Espy kind of butted heads a little bit. He wanted to take the main songwriter role, and I'm a big songwriter. And I get that. It was his band, and he wanted to do that. So I actually got let go for a cooler kid, who I will not mention. But anyway, so I was kind of heartbroken. But it was like, okay, well, there's this other band, Therion. Let's check them out. And so history.
Yeah, no, I mean, exactly. That's a really cool, like little mark in the genre's history. It's so cool. So
yeah, and it's kind of crazy to sorry, I'm a cut in, but
feel free.
Just like thinking that like you guys were in high school, and everybody who's ever been in a high school band, there's that notion and the thought like, yeah, we're gonna be legendary, we're gonna be big, but you guys actually fucking like the band that you were in actually achieved that status eventually.
Yeah, all of them. Yeah, it's crazy to think about a bunch of 17-year-olds running around with that had just inked British record deals. And it's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
the forerunner was of course Entombed, or Nihilist at the time, and I think they probably broke it open for everyone. So,
yeah,
sounds about right.
Yeah, it's kind of it's the same like the pen pal and just like the tape trading. Because I just recently finished the book of I'm not going to pronounce his real name because I don't know, but Necrobutcher from Mayhem. And they were, I'm assuming, just like in the outskirts of Oslo, so kind of like close enough to like make a gig, at any given day, but like far out enough so that they were kind of like living in the country. And just like pictures of like the weekly mail coming from like all over the world. It's like, hey, we got a package from Indonesia, and it's like, so they were kind of like the local celebrities at the post office. Like, hey, made a private, like a cabinet for your guys' mail because you guys get so much. That's kind of insane to think these days. Well, in a way, like emails kind of condensed it into a nano space. But just for sure. I don't think we got that much mail with Therian at the beginning, but some of it was filtered off to me because we basically, had to handle the mail coming in. So I took some of the pen pal stuff, and I'll tell you what, man, there's nothing that compares to like coming home on your lunchtime at school and wondering what's going to be in the mailbox that day, what tape or a letter from Greece or Europe, and it was just a really cool experience that I don't think can be recreated by email.
No kidding. Yeah, and like probably will just never happen again. That's gotta be awesome. I can't even.
It was fun, man. It was a fun time for sure.
Yeah. Now I have to ask you, like, anytime there was a mail or letter or cassette from a band, you put it on and you instantly know that this band's going to be famous. Any like picks where you kind of like, okay, I told you.
Right. Not really that, but Ron, I had the reverse of that happen to me actually, and I can't mention the name because they are famous. But at the time they were really cool. I want to say they're Eastern Bloc band, but I'm not going to mention the name. And they were great. They were cool people, but we would listen to them and they were like, you guys need some work. In my mind, I was like, oh, they're not there yet. And, as a kid, we kind of thought, oh, well, we're kind of better than them, but they just hadn't got there yet. And they were great guys though. And we kind of thought, oh, they're not that great, but they're huge now. So that's really, and I heard them recently. I'm like, holy crap. It's been like 20 years, but holy crap, they're good now.
Yeah.
So well,
everybody can take that home and wonder. Let us know in the comments what you think it might be, because you're never going to know the real answer. But
it's cool to think about when you hear someone's demo, like, oh, you guys are not that great, and then fast forward, like, holy crap, you guys are great now.
Yeah,
for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, like the scene in general, like, because. Well, I sort of lived that. Not like none of the bands that I was involved or played with, we broke up. We were destined to walk in the demo lot cassette. Well, it wasn't even cassettes anymore; it was CDRs. But like destined to walk that scene forever. And but like every band in the area, like there was a time frame for about like maybe 5 years where everybody hung out with each other. You'd go to see their practice because it's like they got to do it Friday, but then everyone's going to go drinking after that, so you kind of like might as well go there and kind of like pregame while they play,
hang out at the jam room.
So was it like that in the Stockholm?
Yes and no.
Like everybody
everyone was pretty spread out as far as where they were able to have their jam rooms. So it wasn't a jam room type hangout situation like that. Plus, we weren't of drinking age either. But so the thing that did compare to that, and this is actually, I've actually been planning to write a book about this my time in Sweden there, and so I need to actually get on that. I took a bunch of notes a couple years ago, but just got distracted. But the premise of the book is called Kartan, which means the map in Swedish. And so there was a place in the main subway station in Stockholm that was this big map. Now I've heard recently that that area's been remodeled. It isn't there anymore. But where this big map was the gathering place for all the death metal kids. And so, for example, even if a band came in from Gothenburg or came in from Denmark even, everyone knew in the death metal scene, even though there wasn't an internet, everyone knew about the karta on the map. And so you could go by there almost any day and there would be some death metal kid hanging out. So it was this central area.
That's cool. I was going to ask you a bunch of questions about Stockholm because I've never been to Sweden, and just as somebody who loves to travel, and I've always been curious about it, I was just wondering like what it was like living there, growing up there, like just being involved in that whole environment, because I know nothing about Sweden other than like, you know, a lot of amazing bands came from it, and that it's probably a little bit colder than over here. That's about the extent of my knowledge.
Well, what I can sum it up as is that I had amazing mobility because they have a fantastic subway system. Right. So you just get your monthly card, and it was a different time. You know, it wasn't a situation where parents were so scared about their kids, and of course I was in Europe, so it was very open-minded. So I just got on the subway system and just fucking went. And especially during the summers, you know, it didn't get dark till around 10:30 at night. So like, bye mom, see you when it gets dark has a different meaning. So
right.
And it's a beautiful city. You don't need a car, really. So I could get anywhere. And back to Ron's question, Therion actually rehearsed on the outskirts of the complete other side of town that I lived on. So I had to get on a subway, go into the central station where I was talking about, and take a commuter train out to the place that's called Upplands Väsby. And Upplands Väsby, strangely enough, was also home to another Swedish band in Europe.
Cool.
So it was so funny that here with this heavy death metal band, and like, oh, our same hometown area is from Europe. Yeah. So we never ran into those guys, but every once in a while I would run into Yngwie Malmsteen in a music store, and we were like, it's him.
Nice.
Was he wearing?
Did you offer him donuts?
No. We didn't need any.
I don't like fucking donuts, man. But yeah, it's definitely just jumping into Aaron's question. Like, yeah, it never gets dark in the summer because, like, I was born and raised in Finland, and I lived there and up until. Well, I was about 18 when I first moved out, and now I haven't lived there in almost a decade now. But that's the one thing that I really miss. Like, if you're not in school, you're not like working on vacation. You know, that's such a unique thing to feel. Like, you go to a bar and it's kind of still light. You go there. And you get out around closing time, and it's like, holy fuck! It's like almost as bright as a day.
Exactly, and that I experienced that when I'm back in Canada now with my my new wife, so that was good.
Yeah.
So same thing where it's like 11 o'clock at night and still kind of light.
Yeah.
That was.
Yeah, that's in Calgary, right?
That's correct, in Calgary. Yeah, so it's cool. And so actually with Therion, we did play in Helsinki once. We played at this place called El Paco or something like that. Le Paco. That's it.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that?
Yep. It actually closed down, I would say, to 1999. So, but that was like the primary venue, and I believe the shows were all ages, so that was kind of like the only place a 16, well, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like the only place in town where a 16-year-old could go see. They had Nirvana played there. I think it was actually after Nevermind came out, but it was before people were like, holy fuck.
Right.
So it was that brief time window where it's you have the big label support and they're still touring clubs, and then
it was a really cool venue. They have a huge stage there. So we actually played there in 1990. That's actually on YouTube. You can find that Therion show in 1990, Le Paco, Helsinki. And that Le Paco was a cool place, actually, like you said, for underage people as well, because they also had a rehearsal complex beneath it.
Yep.
And I think Hanoi Rock's rehearsal room was in there as well. So other famous Finns. We played there at the Le Paco, and that was really cool. And one of the cool experiences about the Le Paco show is that we took the ferry over from from Stockholm overnight. Not the ferry, like the
party
miniature
boat.
cruise ship. Yeah, party boat. Yes.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool. And one of the coolest experiences that we were getting lunch like before the show or whatever downtown Helsinki, and there were metal kids a little bit younger than us, and they had Therion patches on their back. We're like, oh my god, we're famous in Finland. That's pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah. No, but it's like those days, like, even though like information was sort of it was certainly more limited, and these days I like sometimes like hope it still would be somewhat, because now it's just overloaded. But
Right.
it's still kind of crazy to think like, you know, you could have fans in Indonesia or Argentina without even knowing about it, and kind of so just the feel, like I can imagine the feeling of like, holy fuck.
Right. I think it was a lot of zines back in the day. You know, those are some of the people I had pen pals with, as well as people that had zines all over the place. In fact, Nick Andersson from Entombed himself had a zine. So I think that's one way he got into some of the networking as well.
Yeah. Did you ever network with any like Finnish bands like Sentence or like Amorphous, or like those guys who were kind of starting the same thing in Finland, or was that?
That's the weird part, is that we didn't really exchange much contact with any of the Finnish bands at the time. I'm not sure if there really were any that we knew of at the time. A lot of our pen pals were like from Greece, from Canada, the States, Eastern Bloc, UK. So Greece like are huge metal fans. The Greeks are. So, and it's just crazy being in Stockholm and like, how did you find us? You're in Greece. That's great.
Yeah,
it's pretty awesome.
And there was no internet.
Where there is a will.
Yep.
Yeah. And it just like made everything more like mysterious, like mystique. And
for sure.
I was just reading the book about Mayhem, and they were just like giving these insane comments in the interviews, and to kind of like build up their stock in the land of mystique.
The edge.
So yeah, to kind of like
that was their shtick, though, you know.
Yeah,
but then,
oh my god, ...
Then the things got
mystique
real.
Was, yeah.
Speaking of books, have you guys read the Swedish death metal book, Daniel Ekström?
I think my buddy. The quick answer is no, but I think my buddy showed it to me. I remember he just walked in the door and he's just like, pulled it out. I'm like, all right, dude.
It's fantastic. And
here's wisdom.
Carry-on's in there.
All right.
Yeah.
Make a note of that.
I have to read that book as well after I'm done with the Sober Curiosity book.
Yeah, it's called Swedish Death Metal. Daniel Ekström is the author.
Okay, yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, because I love autobiographies, man. It's I don't bother with fiction so much because there's just so much interesting things that have happened in the real world, and kind of like makes you think like, why do we need like Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman, where it's like those guys like actually existed in some other form, you know?
Absolutely, it's crazy. Life is stranger than fiction sometimes.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did you guys get started, actually? Oh, sorry. You go ahead.
Yeah, no, you first come, first serve.
Ask, maybe this was already covered and I spaced it out because I've been drinking. But as far as like the early days of Dismembered, how did that all just like come together? Like, how did you guys get in touch? Like, well, you said that you guys were in school together, right? But how did it all get going?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to school with Fred Espy, the drummer and founding member of Dismember, and also Nick Andersson from Entombed. And we just kind of became a friend group because we were the only weird kids there. And Nick had already had quite a head start. He already had Nihilist. But, since I was kind of the new kid, we actually all together jammed out. So there was a couple jam sessions. It was myself, Nick, and Fred, and then sometimes Kenny, the bass player I told you about. And then we also had a friend, Daniel Blomqvist. And so then he sort of joined the fold. And it was basically a jam session that started out, but then it kind of paired off to be whatever the band was to be, that was to be Dismember. And it was kind of a friendly jam session thing. And we did start running a couple songs, of which I actually wrote a couple. And we just kind of started from there. In fact, there's a very early photo shoot that I'm involved in. We were out in front of a Pizza Hut for some reason. I don't know why, but I can send those pictures over to Ron later. So it just started going with some good momentum. And then I think, like I said, there was a bit of a butting heads as far as who was going to be the main writer, which I'm not sure why that had to be a thing. But the other thing to think about is that we're kids, kids do dumb shit.
Yeah.
So, but it kind of just became that thing. And we actually were about to jump into the studio, and then I got fired, and it's whatever. It just, our, kind of like Ron was saying, our high school band was just went a little bigger than most people's did.
Yeah.
Right.
Just a tad.
A little bit.
Yeah.
But I was pretty heartbroken, but then I found Therion, and it's great.
Yeah. I think the question that I think a lot of the listeners might be wondering about, like, whose idea was the HM2 pedal? Or like, did that just like, it was just the distortion pedal that everybody had, and like, holy shit, we have to like create something? Or like, did that just happen naturally? Or,
well, here's the thing. I think part of what you're saying is true, but I definitely will credit a team of Nick Andersson and also the Sunlight Studio guy, Thomas Stokesberg, but credit them for that. But here's the thing though, just like you said, that was an affordable distortion pedal that was in every music store. And it was like, okay, here's this heavy metal pedal. And it was there. And it was probably never meant to be used with every knob dimed.
Yep.
Like all of them. Yeah. So basically Nick Andersson and Thomas Stokesberg in the studio just somehow figured that out. And I think I talked to you about this before. They used a real shitty PV Bandit amp. And just a mix of the dime settings, that amp, close mic'd and compression, that sound was born. And
wow,
the buzzsaw was born. And so like you said, Ron, it was a pedal that was at hand. They just figured out how to make it really sound nasty.
Yeah. Well, turn everything up. It usually,
But real quick on Thomas Stokesberg as well, he was also an unlikely character also. I think that Nick just found this studio just by chance. And Thomas Stokesberg, he was not a metal dude. He was what would be these days known as maybe like a hipster or bohemian. He had dyed black curly hair and this little Greek fisherman's cap. He was not a metal dude. He just happened to have a great ear. And so after... And at the time, Nihilist recorded something, and it just sounded massive in there. All of a sudden, Thomas Stokesberg just got all this business, and he was, okay, I guess I'm the metal dude now.
Yeah.
Tiny studio, two small rooms.
Yeah. That's actually quite I was talking to Dweed Hellion from Integrity just a while ago, and so he kind of mentioned this similar thing happened to the guy who recorded all Integrity and Ringworm, like all the Cleveland hardcore. A bit of a similar thing where it's like somebody found a studio that was able to decode and kind of like put together the sound that suited the band, and then he kind of inherited all the bands. And he, from what I've heard, he did not like, he enjoyed the process, but he wasn't really like musically into it. So that's kind of funny.
But he was good at it somehow.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a pretty interesting. Yeah. Now I see like everybody tagging Thomas in like death metal albums, and I'm like, okay, well.
Yeah, he's a real nice guy, real chill guy. So, I mean, Therion as well, we ended up recording there. It just became the place to go, and it was relatively affordable. The other funny thing, I think I talked to you about this as well, is that the drums, it was never real drums. It was always a Roland R8 drum machine with the D-drum pads. And sometimes, if you were nice to him, he would let you bring in your own snare drum. But it was like D-drum pads, cymbals. Like, no, there's not room. It wasn't. It was pretty much a little bit larger than a big vocal booth, you know, where the drums would be. So very small.
Fucking cool.
I've actually, I've since told, I remember because you helped me out with the Call 2 when I was just doing research about like different, and when you mentioned that, and I sent that to this die-hard old school metal who was a big on tune fan, and I was like, no way.
Yeah, I mean, there's real snare on there, but the rest of it, it's like, especially the Clandestine album, you can hear that R8 kick in there. You can just hear it.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But I guess, like, you know, Def Leppard and all those bands, like, they did the very same thing. Like Pyromania, it's just the Fairlight or Simmons or Lindrum or whatever they used, and then Rick's just playing, you know, cymbals on top of that. And
exactly. No, live cymbals for sure.
Yeah. But it gives you that, like, separation because, like, kind of like the Slayer Show No Mercy, they record the shells and the cymbals, like, separately, and you can definitely hear that. But it's like, especially if you have Paiste Rudes or something like really thick, they're not very good like studio cymbals, because you got to hit them real hard, and the harder you hit, and then your tom tracks are fucked.
Bleed into everything, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm taking notes.
Yeah. And our listeners are taking a breather. I'm like, I can't believe it. Samples.
So this dude was like kind of upset that it was actually not real drums, or?
Yep. I was like, no way. There's no way. That's off, but you know, it's not about the process. It's about the end result, I think. Yeah. That's all that really should matter.
I can't wait to tell certain people though the truth about Clandestine.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's Left Hand Path too, but you can really hear it on Clandestine a bit more out front, that kick drum. But it's the same setup for Left Hand Path as well, and for the Therion first couple albums too, and for most of the bands. And here's the thing: it wasn't Thomas trying to just be weird. It was like a very small control room, very small booth, and that was just the efficient way for him to do it. Like, hey, I'm gonna have live cymbals, and I don't have much room, and I can make this drum machine sound killer, you know. And it's still a real drummer playing it.
No, but I love that. I love that. It's just like the HM2 sound too. It's just all born out of necessity. It's just getting creative with just working with what you got. I love that. I love that kind of stuff.
And so Thomas, like I said, also had a fantastic ear. He wasn't from the metal world. He probably was more like a punk/rock type dude who just had a fantastic ear.
Yeah. So was that more of like before like enter the death metal thing? Like he would just like be working on the hybrid setup with others, and then just like, well, how about guys, we try this, and then that just kind of happened, or was that sort of crafted for the metal thing? Like you're playing too many kicks, like there's no way, like we got to figure something out, or
no, it was just like we talked about, born out of necessity. There wasn't room, so pretty much any band he recorded, I feel like that's how he recorded pretty much any band. Like, okay, get behind this D-drum kit, and it looked funny, you know, just these little pads, and you know, the weird little kick drum thing, little L thing. So awesome. Just born out of necessity. And we recorded on reel-to-reels, and you know, there was no fucking computer. The closest thing to a computer was that Roland R8 drum machine.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Yeah. Trying to imagine. Well, yeah, no, I mean, I guess it's versatile. It could, that kind of setup would go across any genre, I guess, except for bluegrass, right? Like,
well, actually, I'm sure the Roland R8 drum machine had perfectly natural sounding settings. So I'm pretty sure he used that for everything.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, when I listen to, like, say, like, Left Hand Path, and usually what gives out the, like, electronic drums is a...
Yeah, the toms.
But that's like there's no way to tell. Like it's just so kind of like you hear that there's probably some samples or just like some serious like processing.
Oh, we were basically talking about how on the Left Hand Path you can definitely hear that the toms specifically are not real. It's like, I think track 3 or 4 or 2 or 3 on or something like that. The song starts with a tom roll, and they put some chorus on it.
I was just thinking, like, that got me wondering now about like all the other old Morbid Angel. Whenever I heard like Pete Sandoval do a fill, it did kind of sound just. I mean, that might just be him. He might just be so perfect that it just sounds like a drum machine. Like just.
Gotcha. Well, they had the equivalent there, the Mora Sound Studios.
Right.
And so back to Dayside, you got to imagine those were probably also electronic kicks, right? You know, Dead by Dawn. That's pretty fucking fast.
Yeah. I mean, there was a ton of triggers and stuff like that.
Well, there's the article that I read. I think what was it, like your favorite album was probably Triggered or something. There was an interview with Jim Morris, and he said that something to the lines of they had a computer, MS-DOS, by the way, or DOS, and so they had a calculator because they weren't recording to a click.
Oh,
that
shit.
was MIDI control to like I don't even know like which drum machine, but it was kind of like.
Oh damn.
So chances are some of that stuff might actually be just like computer overdubs. I'm not gonna say anything. Everybody can do their own research, but that's the article that I read about Jim Morris.
Wow, because they didn't have computer sequencers at the time, I guess.
Yeah. Or
that's nuts.
Or it was also something that they were just trying to play beyond their capability, so it would have to be like doing a double bass sequence in like 16 parts, and then even like so I think, and that's what I like read about Scott Burns, who also engineered a shit ton of those bands, that he just like the quality of musicianship eventually went down, so he just like burned out and hasn't engineered anything since.
Oh damn, that's crazy. Yeah, I could see that though, because like, you know, being a teen in Sweden, there wasn't much else to do. We would just rehearse for hours and hours. You know, we didn't have a fucking phone to have our face buried in.
Right.
Now there were of course girls to spend our time with, but generally there wasn't too many distractions. You know, you'd be in this fucking rehearsal studio, be on the side of your bed working on your craft.
Right. Yeah. I mean, compared to today, I'm distracted.
Yeah, I feel it.
Well, I've been playing Angry Birds 2 this whole time, by the way. So
nice,
very nice.
Fantastic.
Retro.
Yeah. No, but that's it's almost like the time was just so. It was the same world, but like a different world at the same time. Like that's funny.
No, dude, you're exactly right. It feels like a whole different life to me. I mean, I guess it was. I'm 47 now, but it just feels like I'm talking about someone else, and it's really fucking strange.
Yeah.
Time is strange, man.
Yeah. Somehow I'm like wishing for technology to somehow regress. Even though like technology is amazing and I'm all for all the advancements, but like you said, it's like there were no distractions back then. There was nothing to prevent you from just hunkering down and focusing on developing your skills, your craft, and just
exactly.
There was nothing to deter your focus. And I remember that. I remember coming from that, and yeah, it's just there's just so much of everything now. Just so much of everything everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, it's crazy, man. But and kind of back to your point, actually, about being completely like focused in the death metal world. I was so hyper focused in that honestly, the ending of my Stockholm story, I'll basically say, is that after that 5 years that I was there, my parents, we just felt, well, you know, we're kind of done for now. So we just became time to move back to the States. And after that was kind of a cutoff point for me, to where I had basically lived and breathed death metal for so long. Not necessarily that I was tired of it, but I was just looking for something else. So right at the tail end of that, I was getting into all kinds of different things. A friend of mine took me to a Depeche Mode concert. So I got kind of brought into the sort of goth world. And then at the same time, a lot of the hair metal stuff was getting big. And to sound like a guy again, that's where the girls were. They weren't at the metal shows. They weren't at the death metal shows.
They were at
they were at the Warrant show. That's where they were. And so I'm like, well, this sounds pretty interesting. So, but long story short, is that when I moved away from Sweden, that was I pretty much stepped out of the death metal world entirely, because honestly, it was time for something different. So fast forward to 96, I kind of got into the goth industrial world, and I'm pretty much still there now. So, and my wife now, Gabby, she's a huge metalhead. She would always go to the 70K cruises and stuff. So just now, this last year, I'm getting back into some of that metal I missed out on. So I'm having to play catch up on some of the now melodic death metal acts and things like that.
Yeah.
And then, so you're a filmmaker, or should we say a videographer these days? So did that also became into fruition after, exit Sweden, return back to Texas, or did that kind of happen around the same time, or?
Oh, much later, actually. So fast forward to me having my own, my own actual project that's called Adoration Destroyed, and that we're signed to Cleopatra Records, actually. So it's kind of a goth industrial band. I do all the vocals and programming, and so you could probably compare it to a heavier Depeche Mode. There's some Gary Newman, there's some Manson influences in there. It's cool stuff. So the music video thing came from that. Like, I knew we had to have music videos, and I met a couple people here in Texas that did them, and cool people. But I was like, the rate you're quoting me, I'm pretty nerdy. I have a good eye. And I was like, I'm just going to buy camera equipment and figure it out, because I wanted to make videos for my own band. And it turns out that I'm actually good at it. So that kind of became a thing. And it's been really rewarding to be behind the scenes and put that stuff together, not only for your own band, but for others. Yeah. So it's become a lot of fun. That's awesome. And a lot of that stuff is very much more affordable these days. So there's that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and it's I think a lot of people have gotten into recording and like making videos just based on those same. It's like, shit, man, I can't afford 20 grand to right make a 3.5 half minute promotional clip that's not going to be seen by anyone, especially now. Well, like, YouTube's there, but there's no like MTV, there's no VH1, like those kind of like the gatekeeper big things. Kind of argue the point, like, YouTube is worldwide and instantaneous, so it's, I don't know if it's actually going for the better in that sense, but certainly a lot more traffic.
Oh yeah,
nothing's exclusive.
Like, no one's doing the programming for YouTube. Like, this hour is going to be
right. No.
This and
so that actually brings me to
here.
Exactly. That brings me to my next point, actually. I grew up on MTV as a kid. MTV was fantastic back in the day. So that's actually a huge influence of what I do for my cinematography, is that I loved that, like, 80s / even early 90s. Those music videos that happened then were fantastic.
They're epic. They were so epic.
Yep. That influences me now. So those are the kind of videos that I want to make.
I feel like every single video that was on Headbangers Ball was like a spectacle. Just like everyone. Do you remember seeing like the video for Low from Testament, like in the 90s, where like Chuck Billy's getting covered in oil and all that?
Oh my God, I haven't seen that one. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I want to see him covered in oil.
It was great. And they were all kind of like that. I remember like the old Sepultura videos, like Dead Embryonic Cells. They were at a castle and everything was
right.
Just like everything looked like a movie. Just
exactly. Actually, to piggyback off that same thing, have you seen any of Creator's recent music videos? They're also fucking epic. He's still doing the thing.
I have not.
Creator. So they're still doing it. So
the last,
and that kind of like
after you.
Oh, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, the last truly epic video that I've seen from a heavy band was probably Behemoth. Just because, like, the theatrics and the conceptual aspects of it. I can't even remember what song it was, but they were out in the woods, and I think it had to do with Satan. And yeah.
Satan, he's a good dude.
Classical. Yeah. But yeah, what I was going to say, I actually messaged you a while back because I was sort of like getting into maybe trying to make my own videos. And so I was asking you, like, did you know, like, what did they do different in those like early 90s, late 80s? And then a friend of mine actually messaged me and said that it was the Betacam SP format that kind of made everything look like the frame rate and the way of the color and the halos of the lights and kind of like stuff like burning onto the lens. If you watch the live shit Metallica, there's like the lights are just kind of doing this weird thing. So I think that might actually be something that I would want to get.
Right. Well, you can recreate a lot of that. In fact, I do some of that stuff on my own. I use a specific filter on all my cameras that sort of gives a softer look, almost like a more film-like look. But at the same time, it actually blooms out in halos on light sources. So that's called a Black Pro Mist filter. So if you do have a camera, that's a little tip. It's a Black Pro Mist filter by a brand called Tiffin.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, dude, I'm sure you could probably find one of those beta cams on eBay or something. Not sure how well they
Believe
work.
me, I've looked.
Oh, they're not okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of like TV radio station in Anaheim selling off their old stock and it's but sometimes like you only get the it's just there's no like lens or
just the body.
It's just a beta cam extension to the body or something. So it's kind of like, well, I don't even know if that works. Like where am I going to get the beta cam cassettes or how to transfer to a computer?
It's probably better to try to get that look. Better in post to try to get that look, like I said. Probably.
Yeah, I might try to look into the lens, and because that's like, I don't know, it's like the frame rate these days or something. Like a lot of it just, I don't know if it's a 24 frames per second, magic that kind of works or something, but it's like everything was so smoother,
Right. Our eyes are used to seeing.
Even like, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so everything just looked, even of like bunch of ugly guys, wearing like normal t-shirts in a abandoned bunker, that was like, holy shit, those guys must be big.
Yeah, right. The 24 frames per second is what I shoot in, and that's because it's what the eye is used to seeing with regard to motion blur and stuff like that. Now that's a good question. I'm curious what frame rate those beta cams shot in. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm still learning about all that sort of stuff, so I'm like trying to just keep up with what you guys literally just said.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, still learning about that. It's fascinating though. It's so interesting. Nope, I didn't have a question. Never mind.
Is there like a music video or say like top 3 or any videos that you're still like, holy fuck, like when you see them?
As far as like something on YouTube or whatever,
or like metal, classic music videos where it's like, damn.
See, now you got to stump me. So that's a good question. Going on to sort of more of the 90s things where there were still fantastic videos going on. If you guys remember, Allison Chain's Angry Chair was a killer video.
Yep.
You guys remember that one?
Yep.
Vaguely.
Yep. And then also a totally different type of video. I'm not a huge Tool fan, but their video for Sober was crazy at the time. If you remember that.
Yeah.
That was just a weird fucking video. Like, what did I see? What is this?
Yeah. No, they had so many of those. And that whole period too. And that whole era. And then like with 9 Inch Nails, all those videos.
Oh yeah.
It's such an insanely creative time during the 90s. I totally took it for granted. Like even these bands I hated, they still were like, yeah, you guys are like still pushing the envelope and coming out with like really innovative stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm curious about like, so as a videographer, like when you watch videos, can you, well, I guess this is a two-parter. Like when you watch videos, do you automatically go like to analyzing everything about the video and like how did they shoot this? Like what was the lighting like or anything like this? Or can you just like sit back and actually enjoy it as a viewer?
Right. I think I do still hold some of the sense of wonder to enjoy it. I think that's a good question. I just watched a video today and I really wanted to step back and just enjoy it and not analyze it. And so that's really what I look for in my own content is I want it to be something that will keep your interest, that someone's not going to click off of after 30 seconds. So that's always in the back of my mind when I'm creating stuff. Like, also back to our earlier conversation, what if someone gets a Facebook notification and I want them to say, fuck that notification, I'm going to watch this video.
Right.
There's so many distractions.
Oh, geez, that's like the challenge, right? That's like, yeah.
So, yeah, I actually do still hold some sense of wonder about being able to watch stuff still because I want it to be watchable. I don't want to create something that's technically a masterpiece and someone's going to watch 20 seconds and then go check their messages.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
It's rough.
That makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that's like, I wish more, I'm not sure like how popular that is amongst engineers, but sometimes like I just get the feeling that, holy shit, that snare was freaking epic and this bass drop in here. It's like, well, did you really like the song?
Yeah.
Right. Or like, what we just said, about just like actually liking the song more than the production and what went into it.
Right.
Enjoying if you really love, because if you really love, say, like drum editing or vocal editing, like just do that. You know, like mastering engineers, they don't really know too much about like the actual technical stuff, but they can just fine tune it because they're great listeners. Right.
Exactly. Their craft is listening. And I find mastering is something that a lot of people will skip on, or skimp on, actually, is the word I'm going to use. And I actually, with my own band, I do remixes. And specifically in the classic sense of giving someone's song a makeover, as it were. And I have to have this conversation with my clients. Now, granted, it's mostly electronic music clients, but I have to tell them, so you're going to get this mastered, right? Oh, one of our guys, no. You need to go to someone who actually is a mastering engineer. I had one of my remixes messed up because all right, my guy, he owns a studio, and it's like, no, that's not what he does.
Right.
Yeah.
You can make or break a song in a master.
Was it Vapor Trails from Rush? Right, that was the nightmare mastering situation.
Oh, I love Rush. I didn't hear about that
too. But yeah, like when I believe the album was Vapor Trails. When it first came out, it was like a botched mastering job, and everything was just like it was just overly compressed and overly distorted, and I believe it
Deaf Magnetic.
Saint Anger, actually, right?
Saint Anger.
Yeah.
Was it before?
No, that went wrong during the writing.
But for this Vapor Trails, though, was that pre or post Saint Anger Volume Wars era?
Way before. Yeah.
So I never heard that story. Did it get released like that, or did they catch it?
No, it got released. I remember hearing it on the radio, and I went to school for engineering, and that's what was used as an example in one of the classes.
Wow.
Of basically pointing out don't do this.
I kind of wonder how that escaped Rush. You would have.
I know, right? I know. I'm assuming it must have been like a label thing where it was just like, we gotta get this done, and maybe they were on tour or something. Who knows?
Right.
I don't know.
Who knows?
But yeah, it's kind of criminal that it would happen to Rush.
There was no moving pictures then, huh?
Right. Well, I mean, musically it was cool. I remember hearing that. It wasn't as noticeable on the radio, because on radio it's a little more compressed anyway, right?
Everything's compressed.
Yeah, so it wasn't that noticeable. So I guess it wasn't unless you actually bought the record and brought it home that it was an issue. I don't know.
Ew.
But I think they weathered the storm. They seem to, they did all right after.
I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
I got to see them on the Power Windows tour, actually, so that was an absolute gift that I got to experience. So
I never saw them. Oddly enough, I remember hearing, I forget which Dismember record it was, but I remember hearing a little bit of Rush influence on one of the tunes where they broke down into this really jammy section that sounded super,
oh wow,
off time signatures, really progressive styles and all that sort of stuff. This has been in the back of my head this entire conversation, and I didn't know where to insert it until just now. So
gotcha.
There, boom.
I'm not familiar with that
mic drop.
Bit.
Well, I guess I was just wondering if there was a strong progressive rock influence in the death metal scene. 'Cause I'm completely ignorant when it comes to the Swedish metal scene and all that. So, yeah, I was curious. As far as the death metal scene goes, were there any other kinds of outside influences besides punk, besides traditional metal and all that sort of stuff? Was there anything else kind of coming down the pipe?
Well, I'll break it down into two bits here real quick. I'll say the Dismember and Entombed crew, right? And then I'll say the Therion crew. Now, the Dismember and Entombed crew, like I said earlier, came influence-wise from punk, heavy metal, and Kiss and stuff like that. So there was the groove, and then there was a debate element. As far as hanging out with those two dudes, I don't remember any progressive anything. It was all punk or Kiss.
Gotcha.
Or then of course everyone loves Slayer, so there was lots of Slayer.
Right.
And now moving on to the Therion side, Christopher Jonsson. He loved old school heavy metal, but he also liked a lot of weird jazz. And he never really played it much for me, but the second Therion album definitely had weird off-time jazz influences. And I remember him teaching us these things, and I'm like, we're going to do this weird thing with these weird chords. And we're like, okay, whatever, I'm just playing bass. But if you hear the second Therion album, definitely has progressive elements on it. Not the one I played on, but I was with they're around for the first album and the writing of the second album. And the second one, you will definitely, after this, check it out.
Sure.
Definitely hear those weird progressive influences. But Christopher Jonsson definitely pull those from jazz, not really Rush per se. So.
Yeah. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's all pulled from jazz anyway, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So, I mean, he even went granular on it. He even told the drummer to play specific off-time ride rhythms and things like that. And so, there was definitely progressive experimentation even while I was still there.
That's
for
cool.
That second album.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out.
So, and that album was terribly sweet. They dedicated that album to me, like, oh, Erik had to move back to Texas, blah, blah. So that's really cute.
That's cool.
That's cool. Yeah. Instead of like, yeah, best of luck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So not to diverge
but that
from
kind
the
of
whole video thing.
Yeah.
No, we got
Yeah,
that.
But yeah, but that kind of leads me to, I guess, like the one thing that I've always wondered about Swedish death metal was that you guys tuned real low.
Oh yeah.
Who came up with that? Because before that, I can't think of a single band that played like D or lower, whereas like you guys just went straight to like B and.
Oh, for sure. Again, I can only speak from my small circle, but Nick Andersson, and this is a little interesting fact, is that he actually wrote all those Entombed songs on a left. He's actually left-handed. He wrote that on a left-handed acoustic guitar, tuned down, and so that's just what he played at, those low tunings. And so I really honestly think, and hey, he's still alive. I've lost contact with him, but I really think Nick Andersson invented a lot of this stuff. So it's crazy. But at the same time, I mean, there was also Carcass doing similar things in UK at the same time, and some American death metal bands too. But if you remember, early Morbid Angel wasn't even that low,
No. Yeah. It was what, like half step down or something?
Yeah.
Like an E flat. I mean, the only band I can think of was Sabbath. That as far as one of the early people that tuned down, but that wasn't until what? Oh God, I can't remember when. I don't know. That's a damn good question, Ron. God damn it.
I would almost, like I said, I almost credit the UK and Sweden for really bringing that low tune sound, because like I said, you had Carcass with that low tune stuff, then the Swedish death metal stuff stemming from Entombed, and then it just branched out.
Yeah.
But hey, I could be wrong. Hey, maybe your listeners will call me out, but that's what I remember.
Well, you're in good company. They'll be calling us out too.
All good.
Yeah.
All good.
We'll be crucified.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a funny hipster moment to share with you about that time as well, because I had those old demos, the Morbid Angel demos. Like I had those. We pen pal with those guys, or Nicky did, and so when the first Morbid Angel album came out, and we heard the versions that were on the demos, we were like, it's not as heavy now. It's too clean. It's too fast. And it was such a weird experience for me to be like, well, I heard the demos.
Yeah.
And so even there as a kid, I was like, why is this so clean and faster? And it feels like it's higher pitched.
Yeah.
So it's a funny thing to hear.
I'm trying to think. Yeah. I'm thinking, were the demos, because they title everything, they have that whole alphabetized way of titling albums and all that. So I don't know if this is actually an album before their first album or if it was just a demo, but was it Abominations of Desolation? Was that the actual demo, or was that?
It was Thy Kingdom Come, I think.
Oh, really? I haven't even heard of that one.
If you can look at it on YouTube, it's got a black and white cover of a guy kind of on a cross or something. But I'm pretty sure it was Thy Kingdom Come. It was the demo. If you could look it up really quick.
And
but it's fucking fantastic.
That was I'm assuming that's like the title track of that demo, right? Because they had that song.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
And some of the songs from that demo didn't even make it on the first album. They were on an album after it. But it was really cool time to be able to hear like a preview of an album that went that big.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Damn. Sorry, you like.
But that specific demo is, that specific demo is on YouTube, so you have to check it out. I think it's Thy Kingdom Come.
Oh, I will. I have a list forming now of of all these things I need to check out after. That's so cool. And
actually, kind of to piggyback to a question that you said earlier, Ron, where you knew that a band was going to go super huge. Not to completely stand on Entombed here, but when they were in Nihilist, our friend group around us, we heard their first couple demos, and we kind of just knew that our friends were going to really blow up, and it was crazy. Yeah. It was just that good. It was just that different. And I think it was the demo when they first changed into Entombed from Nihilist, and they had the song But Life Goes On, and that song was just like, holy crap, wow. Yeah, this is it for them, It's crazy.
Yeah. I've gone speechless.
I was about to say, I don't have any friends like that at all. Like,
But you also got to realize that I was very much lucky enough to be in the explosion of this thing, and it's crazy for me to think about. It actually truly is nuts.
Yeah.
I was there at that time. It feels like a totally different life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been planning to write a book about it. So, Ron, you have my permission to keep on me for like, hey, when's that book coming out? Wait, how about that book?
Yeah.
Well, this isn't really Swedish death metal related, but I guess I'm going back to the videographer type stuff as far as like, I'm curious to like, is there anybody in particular that you haven't worked with yet that you would really love to work with?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Let's see. Well, I'm actually gearing up for a move to Canada, actually back to the Canada question. We're going to be moving to the Vancouver area. So definitely some of the metal bands from the West Coast are definitely what I'm going to be looking to get into, kind of piggybacking on some of my previous metal history, as it were. No bands specifically, really. But speaking also of Canadian bands, definitely not metal. But Ron, have you heard of the band, The Birthday Massacre?
I've heard of them. Yeah.
They're kind of a gothic rock band with a female singer, and then they're one of my favorite bands. They're like the AC/DC of goth rock. Like, they pretty much never change. That you could listen to any of their songs, and it's pretty similar, but it's like always really good. So they have like wonderful cinematic music. So I would love to work with them specifically, as they're one of my favorite bands. Yeah. And let's see what other bands I would love to work with if given a chance. That's a good question. I think, honestly, in a broader term, you brought a good question to mind, is that even though I've been away from, death metal or metal in general for so long, I would really like to get back into that now from behind the lens, from not necessarily playing it, but bringing that visceral, raw vision to life. So any death metal bands out there, melodic death metal bands, get a hold of me, Erik Gustafson Cinematography.
I'll probably get a hold of you at some point, actually.
Oh yeah.
I'll send you some emails and question about your rates and all that. Yeah,
absolutely, would love to.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I'm still, to bring it back to music, I'm still doing music. The current project is Adoration Destroyed, so if you could throw a link to that somewhere on your page, that'd be great. We're signed to Cleopatra Records. It's dark electronic industrial, but it's not like crazy screaming. It's very melodic still. It's just got the grimy bass lines and stuff. So I'm still doing that. I'm doing some collaborations with my wife exactly with that as well. And so that was the original thing that brought me into making videos in the first place, is to make videos for my own project. And here's this one sad little bit I will share with you, is that we've done a couple good tours with this band, and we've been okay, done all right. But I've made so much more money making music videos than I made making music at all, and that's a little sad.
There's that reality, right? Yeah. Because
it won't stop me from making music, but still.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing. Like I get paid more just by hitting drums X amount of times and then sampling them.
Right.
That I've like ever made out of like performing actual musical pieces. So I hear you.
Well, I guess we're both, and here's the cool thing about it, Ron, is that you and I are then both able to provide valuable services to other creative musicians. So the circle of life, man.
Yeah. Circle of life.
Yeah.
I mean, at least they're all skills that feed each other, and they're all in the same umbrella too. Because like, well, I mean, I don't know anybody these days that does just one thing. You know, like,
oh God, so many hats, man. So many hats.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
That's the funny thing about the goth industrial world. A lot of the musicians that I know are also DJs, and I've had a couple people saying, "Hey, you should DJ." I'm like, "No, I wear too many hats. I'm not going to DJ."
No, but what's great is you have it. You have this whole like in-house system going, and you're making it work, and that's fucking awesome.
Exactly.
That should be what every like I don't know if I'm about to like label a group of people, but like modern musician, I think that's what every modern musician should strive for, is just to have your own little, ecosystem, your own little self-perpetuating business model.
Sure.
It's like,
for sure. And labels aren't even doing the same. It's not the 80s anymore.
Right.
I'm on a record label, and bless their hearts, Cleopatra Records is a classic industrial goth imprint. And I'm honored to be on their label because it brings me up to a level of like, oh, he's not just some guy in his apartment. But on the same token, bands don't get given money to go tour. They don't get given money to have budgets. It's like the record label these days helps with distribution and a couple other things and a small bit of promotion. But you have to do the lion's share of the work as a band these days yourself, and you have to fund it yourself.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Yeah.
Which actually reminds me of a funny joke, or it's not a joke, it's an actual thing. But this sort of well-known Finnish metal band, about a decade ago, they were looking for a new guitar player, and so they got auditions from like all over the globe. From like South America, and those guys could like freaking rip on a guitar, play everything note to note. But when it came to reality of like finances of the band, like their assumption was that someone's gonna come with a wheelbarrow for a weekly cash load and just drop in year's money and go make metal. It's
oh my God.
So it's there's not a whole lot of moolah to be shared on a music community. So
no,
or there is, but it's going to end up in someone else's pocket. And
for sure. And then I think recently what I've noticed bands are doing in our scene, and probably in metal as well, is that bands will get started, maybe do one album on a record label, and then the rest of it after that, once they are established, it's directly to Bandcamp, and that's it.
Which is, it's a smart move. It's all about building up an audience these days. It's just, if you have the audience, then.
Yeah, especially if they're coming directly to you, then there's no middleman. So
exactly. Then that's all you need. Yeah. And that's a whole other conversation. It might be
a whole other
podcast too.
Yeah.
Like I have so many questions. Like, how do you build an audience in 2021? I am so
Yeah.
Well, the short answer to that is like you have to find your niche. You have to find the people that you're trying to communicate with or do business with. And the smaller that niche, honestly, the better, because just as Ron said earlier, there's so much music. There's a whole shit ton of crap on YouTube that's both amazing and not so amazing. So if you find your audience, especially if it's a smaller one, that's how you do it. So
yeah,
and it comes with a lot of work on social media and just a lot of being out there, and it's rough.
Yeah, I feel like I want to like take that even further, maybe on a future episode of being like, what would the ratio be of like getting yourself out there in the real world versus social media? Like, I don't know.
Right.
I've attempted the whole social media thing, like as far as building audiences, and I'm not good at it. So like, you know, take that for what it is. I've been experimenting for many years with all this sort of stuff, but like, you know, the missing element was like, you know, getting out there in public and like, you know, performing in person and all that sort of like stuff, which is obviously like a part of that, and it makes the most impact, right? Like, obviously, like, but it just brings up this whole other like set of questions of like, well, what's the ratio at this point? Like what I guess like what's the, I don't want to think of like what's the minimum effective dose of like playing shows to attract fans, but like I just wonder like how many people are going to get into you by you playing a show in front of them versus the other type of audience like that's on. I don't know. This is not a fully formulated thought just yet, so maybe that's why it should be for a future thing. But yeah, I'm so curious.
Well, honestly, Aaron, the answer to your question, at least from my experiences, is a bit of both. Like, you have to put something out there in the social media world, but also you have to play those shows, you know? So it's a bit of both. And I think it's really content driven as far as the social media. Right. It could be even just a weird fucking photo. It could be a small video clip, but you have to keep it coming.
Right.
Because there's so much, just like we spoke about earlier, there's so much.
Right.
And if you let your fan base slip for a couple months, they'll move on to somebody else.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's rough.
I love that you were able to distill that drunken rant that I just spewed at you. so thank you. I appreciate that.
But your answer is both. You got to do both the social media and getting out there and playing, you know, whenever that can happen safely again now, who knows, but.
Right.
Yeah. And then actually that kind of reminded me of a comment that I have to slide in here. A buddy of mine, Raymond, he actually made he's kind of like a band coach for people that, you know, are thinking of similar things, and he kind of condensed it into a really well thought out quote, which is your shows are not really, it's not competing like punk rock, country, metal, rap. You know, they're concerts. They're not like competing against one another anymore. They're competing against Xbox, the Netflix, the Amazon. Just the convenience of staying entertained at home.
That's kind of what I mean.
It's just so much more.
Yeah,
that's rough.
Yeah,
you didn't have to compete with that previously. You know, even as close back as the 90s, you know, 1995, people weren't at home playing online games.
And there was so much more of a mystique for like any band. There was just so much more mystery, and there was so much more, you know, I guess there was like these baked in legends with any band. It was just kind of like, you just didn't know about them. You couldn't go on the internet and learn everything about their life. And you know, you couldn't ruin the fantasy for yourself by like clicking a button and like learning about their whole thing. Yeah.
Right. Like, and as far as my touring stuff with my own band, Adoration Destroyed, and I can only speak as much to that because I've been the leader of that band, but the success that we've been able to have on touring specifically is the smaller towns, because those are some of the places that still have some of that, oh shit, there's a show.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
You know, so
Ron and I were just talking about that as far as like how COVID has affected people's appreciation for shows and for music in general. And like, because like we talked about places like New York, right, where like endless options. You have everything, and like people take things for granted. And most times when you go to shows, you see people who are just kind of like, folded arms, and they're just like, impress me.
Exactly.
Which is completely the opposite case when you go to like small town Indiana or where I'm from or anything like that. Like, it's just kind of, and the whole conversation was based around like, is that kind of like a silver lining from COVID? Like that
it could be.
Could this be kind of like a reset in everybody's appreciation of music?
I think it won't last long, but I think it will be a reset.
I agree. Yeah.
Well, that's what Carl Sanders said a week ago. That it's going to be a fuel trucks on its side on a highway, and there's a bunch of people smoking, and it's just going to blow up again.
Right. I hope so. But it's crazy. Like, even myself, I feel a little that I took things for granted. Like, I'm here in Austin, and we have a couple really cool clubs where bands come through all the time. And there have been many times when there was a weekend and some friends of mine are like, oh, there's the show there. And I'm like sitting on my phone on the couch, like, I don't feel like going anywhere. Right. It's like, this was pre-COVID. And then now I'm like, well, fuck, I should have gone to that show.
Yeah.
Dude, there's a Toto cover band playing the Cavern. Let's go.
I would pound a handful of
I totally
Miller Lights. Pound a handful, a couple of Miller Lights for that. Why not?
Sure.
Yeah.
God, I can't remember the last show I saw, actually, now that I think about it. It's I feel like you and I talked about this, Ron, but I can't remember what I actually said to you. But yeah, I mean, yeah, without a doubt, it's going to come back. Like, there's no way it's not going to come back, like, because, people need to feel a connection, and there's nothing like that as far as the live thing. I'm not worried about that. I guess my hope is that like people just somehow just hold on to that perspective, or at least be aware of this perspective that was bestowed upon them from this whole time. I don't know. That's kind of idealistic thinking, but like that would be amazing. We'll see. But I do agree with you, Whitney, what you're saying, that it probably will be short-lived and be like, okay, back to what's comfy.
Right. I mean, because we've all seen the memes about like, oh no, he's going to make me come see his band, the whole, thing, all that stuff. Yeah. And it's rough.
Yeah. Or clicking interested. Any
right, interested. Yep. I might
definitely not going.
Right. There should be an option like, fuck no, buddy.
Yeah. So it's like, holy shit. Like, you were a part of something that I don't think anybody would know the magnitude of things to come, like in years after they first started out,
Well, back to the thing I was telling you about the thing I'm going to write my book about, the Cartan, which is the map, which is the meeting place there. At that time, this was just like, oh, these are my friends. But it was actually bands coming from all over Sweden and even, sometimes Finland that would just somehow show up at this map. You have members from, Merciless, from At the Gates, from Dismember, from, all over. And so it's like, oh, this is my friend group. But then it's like, ultimately, these are bands that would become, the Swedish death metal explosion. And so I was in the middle of an explosion that I wasn't aware that was happening. So it truly was a special time. Absolutely. And, I've said this before, and it sounds braggy, but it's true. It's like my high school band was just a little bit cooler than yours.
Yeah, can't argue with that.
So, I mean, we had 17-year-olds with record deals. I mean, it was nuts. And so in a lot of ways, it was kind of similar to the Seattle grunge thing. Like the record labels realized, oh shit, something's happening. I better go snatch up those bands. So.
Yeah. 86. What is this mother love bone?
Mother love bone. They're badass, by the way.
Fast forward to 91. It's like, yeah, we gotta get those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's really cool, man. So for sure, lots of fun times, and happy to be able to share those experiences and little.
Hey, thanks
anecdotes.
for showing up, man.
Of course.
Yeah, it was actually after that Facebook post that's like, my high school band was cooler than yours. And I was like, oh, I got to get you on the show, man.
Well, dude, it's an absolute pleasure and great to meet you as well, Aaron.
Yeah.
Likewise. This has been it's been a real privilege and an education for me. So I really appreciate you giving your time and sharing your story.
Of course. Thanks, guys. And if you guys ever have any other weird little questions in the middle of the night, I'm only a messenger away. So I reply to everyone, and, so it's all good.
For sure.
Yeah. And
awesome, guys.
Yeah, it's been a blast. Hopefully you guys enjoy this as much as we did, because this was fucking awesome. And the show will be back next week, I think.
But we'll see what happens.
With Lars Ulrich.
Nice, right? But yeah, Ron, it's been a pleasure to know you and use your products. You're doing really something cool, I think, especially getting those tones from the underground styles. I mean, everyone and their mother has used, Easy Drummer 2 or what have you, but you're digging deeper, and I think that's highly admirable. So keep at it, man. Keep at it.
Thanks. Appreciate it, man.
Oh, I mean, it's true.
I agree.
Yeah, so that's been it. Episode about Swedish death metal and some other spooky yummies. And that's it for tonight. And we will see you guys later. Peace.
See ya.
Peace. Thanks, guys.